Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second episode of the podcast. I have a very special guest here today, Dileep Mishra. He is a cybersecurity leader with over 25 years of experience in the tech industry and has had senior roles at Akamai and Radware. He holds the CISSP and CEH certifications and currently has his own consulting firm working with many different organizations, building AI models and a lot of different interesting stuff in the cybersecurity space. I'll let him explain that in a bit. Just also, I want to know this is also my cousin, so typically I would address him as Bhaiya, which in Hindi means older brothers, but I'll be calling him Dileep because we're in a professional setting. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra. It's great to be here.
Great too. Yeah. Okay. Good to see you. I'm very excited about this conversation. I think the goal of this podcast is really trying to understand healthcare and also its implementation from many different aspects. I would like to start with if you can tell us a little bit about your early life and journey before starting professional education.
My early life and journey started back in India, many small towns. My dad had a government job, which means that we moved towns and schools every 4 or 5 years. So I had the privilege of attending 6 different schools. Ultimately, settled down in a town called Ranchi in India. And for all practical purposes, that was the hometown. So spent high school, a 4 year college, and even worked there for about a year. And then got married in the late 90s. Worked for HCL Technologies, which at that time was a relatively small company, now a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. But as far as my early years and childhood goes, it was full of loving family, grandparents, stable family environment. I consider myself very lucky and blessed in that sense.
Great. And, your education in India was engineering, correct?
Yes, so I went to BIT Ranchi, BIT Mesra, as it is many people call it, and I hold an electronics and communications engineering degree from BIT. I also have a master's in computer science from Johns Hopkins in the US.
And my dad went to the same engineering school, so I know that school.
People in the family continue the tradition. Yes.
Okay, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about once you moved to the US, what was your career trajectory as far as roles, but also as you change roles or you develop new skill sets, what was that? Some of that story.
Yes, absolutely. It has been looking back. It was a chain of serendipity and happenstance. That's what it feels like now. So we had just got married in 1998, and we were living in Noida. Me and my wife both had very busy work lives. One fine day, a FedEx letter came which said that you have to join this company called Hughes Network Systems in Germantown, Maryland. Now, of course, there had been a couple of telephonic interviews, but that was 3 months prior to that FedEx letter arriving. It was not expected. So we scrambled. All of a sudden, we packed our bags. I did not even have a passport, had to get an emergency passport. And before we knew it, in January of 1999, we landed at the Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. I worked for that company for a number of years, very fond memories, made a lot of friends, learned a lot of technology. This was right around the time that consumer internet access was picking up. So late 90s, early 2000s is when people started having their own broadband lines. When I arrived in the US, we were still on dial-up. So America Online was king, and people used dial-up modems. That's how you got on the internet. There were internet cafes. If you wanted proper internet access, you had to go to libraries or special cafes. And then, after spending a number of years at Hughes, again, by happenstance, I joined a company called Akamai Technologies, headquartered out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And now we are talking about 2012. And this was an inflection point in terms of technology and personally for me in my career, because this is when cybersecurity was taking off. Along with Akamai, my cybersecurity career began. I helped my customers, mostly in and around the New York area, in the financial services space, build their web security architecture. Consumer banks, insurance companies, healthcare, they all hold mission critical personal information. As cybersecurity threats evolved, so did the profession. And today we are I feel that we are at a very mature place in terms of cybersecurity. People know what they're doing. There are policies in place. There are personnel in place. It was not so clear and organized 13 years ago. And then after spending almost 25 years in the technology industry, I decided to go on my own. So now I run an AI security consulting company called CyberSC.ai. And it feels like, again, we are at a huge inflection point, probably not only the biggest one in my career, but probably in our lifetimes. So a lot of folks compare the advent of generative AI to cloud or mobile or smartphones, but I believe the impact is more like the impact the invention of electricity had on humankind. So here we sit at one of the most exciting times in history, right at the cusp of many innovations to come and many threats to come as well. So I'm very excited to be right in the middle of it and helping people out.
One of the areas of focus for you, AI applications, is healthcare. What kind of problems are we seeing as users and opportunities as a professional in that space?
Yes, in the non-healthcare world, a lot of us like to joke about how broken the system is. From our experience as a consumer to the doctor's office, even before that, when you set up the appointment, then you go visit the doctor's office, then when you are ready to pay your copay, right down to the follow-ups, the pharmacy, there it just feels like there are 15 to 20 different entities that you touch as a consumer of healthcare, or something as simple as an annual physical exam, or something as simple as needing a refill for your medicine. And as frustrating as those challenges are, the fact is that it has, over the years, there has been quite an impressive adoption, in my opinion, of technology in healthcare. So I definitely see us moving on from the binder and forms and paper to online check-ins. I went to my dentist 2 days ago. Appointment reminders start coming they're a little too aggressive, but I would rather have that than do it the old-fashioned way. The check-in is more automated. It is online. Even at the doctor's office now, there are QR codes that we can use to check in. So it seems a little more streamlined. And from a cybersecurity perspective, from the professional angle, what that means is that there is a lot more exposure. So when you're dealing with paper, when you're dealing with trusted data passing through trusted hands, it is one thing. I hand over my personal information with social security number and all my details to the reception. But I'm sure when you do it online, you know, it's kind of a black box to me as a consumer. What's going to happen with my data? Which systems is it going to touch? As as the speed and the ease improves for us as consumers, the attack surface increases as well, and it poses more risks. Thankfully, there have been technologies in place to protect our privacy and protect our data for the last 10, 15 years, I would say. But generative AI and the use of AI technologies, it poses a magnitude of risk, that we have not seen before.
Right. I just want to say healthcare is broken is a joke within healthcare also, but it's less funny. I was at an AI conference yesterday, and one thing that came up is HIPAA, for example. It's a law that, well intentioned, does protect data to some extent from bad actors, people who are trying to do the wrong thing, right? And we, within healthcare, we get HIPAA training once a year at least. All health centers are required. However, what it does not do, it does not enable a pathway for safe and um, safe communication of that data with confidence. The law, by the way, does not require a PCP to get a release of information signed talking to one of the specialists. Let's say you go to a PCP or I go to a PCP and I need to go see an ophthalmologist and the PCP needs to talk to the ophthalmologist. They don't really need my permission for coordination of that care. But all health centers have just gone overboard in the amount of paperwork and amount of even fax some people are still using to be able to release that information. So yes, it has protected health information in the past from somebody who's trying to do the wrong thing maybe, but it has also created a lot of barriers. So do you feel AI potentially has a better way of communicating more safely or confidently that hopefully health centers are more inclined to share that data in a safer manner?
I have bad news on that front because as it is, privacy and security of the data is a challenge when you're dealing with a system which has multiple subsystems built within it, and to provide a seamless experience to the end users is quite difficult in that architecture. With generative AI, as far as privacy is concerned, the risks are actually bigger. It's not going to help, in my opinion. Now it's a different story when it comes to ease of use and speed. There is good news there, and I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to say. So I was at a conference, and one of the publishers of a very well-known magazine was talking about her experience at her doctor's visit a couple of days ago. And what happened with her was she went to the doctor's office and they asked her a few questions about her health. Has anything changed? Are you still on these medications? Those kind of things. And she noticed that the person was not taking notes or not writing anything. And only at the end of the doctor's visit, she was curious and she asked, "Hey, why I noticed that you were not taking notes." And the assistant said, "Oh, we have a new technology and everything that you said and what I said, it was automatically picked up by an AI technology. It was transcribed and it is in the system. So we don't have to do that work manually." So this is awesome in terms of the ease of use. We are not wasting, humans are not wasting time. It's happening real time using AI. But the bad news is that it has become another one of Big Brother is listening areas. People have a theory that all the Alexas and all the Google Homes and many applications on our phones, they're constantly listening to us so that they can show us relevant ads, sell our data, those kind of things. Now that is going to happen to our personal health information. So can AI will make a lot of things easier and it'll increase the speed. But as far as security and privacy is concerned, we are kind of entering a wild, wild west era once again.
Yeah, something it's funny and it's also not funny is that this person you're talking about found it strange that the doctor was paying full attention to her and not onto their computer. But the whole part of your experience is your physician typically or your healthcare provider is looking at the computer more than looking at you in most settings. So just the fact that a human paid attention to you is different. I would say it's a huge innovation because the documentation is just burden. If you had to measure all the different burdens, AI tool can actually help the care provider be more attentive to the patient, which is a huge win. They try to be cute by calling it pajama time, which is just unpaid time that physicians spend at home at night after their kids go to bed and completing their notes.
Yes, and hopefully, the example that I gave, hopefully it's a matter of just making the patients aware that there are these kind of technologies in use. And the fact is that I should not single out just the doctor's office. Most of the meetings that I join, there are note takers which enter the meeting. And most of them are not announcing themselves, right? I'm sure the host has to let them in, whether it is Otter or Fireflies or whatever the note-taking AI app might be. But they are coming kind of unannounced. And some customers that I work with, they're concerned about what is going to happen. Can I speak freely? Where will this transcription be stored? For what purposes will it be used? So on one hand, we are paying full attention to each other, not necessarily our attention is not divided taking notes simultaneously. On the other hand, there There's a lot of data available which can be used for good and for bad.
Yeah, and I think the informed consent piece is really critical. People want to be able to say yes or no to that technology. Eventually, it'll be implied consent, but I think at least early on, it's important to give that consent. We can also talk about, as a healthcare consumer for yourself or a family member, some of the barriers you encountered.
As far as mental health is concerned, good news is there is more and more awareness in the past 5 to 10 years. It has become easier for folks to talk about mental health, you know. But at the same time, access to the right resources uh, and the resources that are available, the interconnection of those resources is a gap which we personally experienced with our one of our teenage kids. So and for us it was, at that time, it came out of the blue. So local school where our kids go to, they had a policy in place where if you do certain type of web searches, it gets flagged. All right. And it happened to us. One of our kids was searching something, and the way it manifested itself was, as parents, we were called to school immediately. We find our child in kind of a confused state, like, okay, what's going on? I have done this search before. And the school said that, you have to get a release paper from a doctor in an emergency before we can let this person go back to school. So on one hand, I understand that there are strict procedures in place, and it was important for the school to notify us as parents. I think that was the good part. But I definitely, in hindsight, I think that the school went overboard, and it was a matter which needed attention. Did it need to be in an emergency room at 7 p.m. in a hospital with the danger of, not being allowed back in school hanging over our heads? Probably not, right? So that is one specific situation that we found ourselves in. After that, we found mental health resources, psychiatrists, therapists. But unfortunately, the journey that we went through was quite painful in terms of lack of clarity among doctors, therapists, behavioral psychologists. And it felt like while everybody was there to help us and help our child, it also felt like everybody was working very hard to make sure that they don't get sued down the line. And at times, we had internal conflicts about whether to continue a particular medication or not. I'm a believer in science. I believe in medicines. I believe in everything a doctor says. So that was my stance on this. My wife's stance was a little bit different. Let's think for ourselves. Is this really needed for our child? And I have to say that in hindsight, she was probably more right. It's not like everything I said was wrong, but her concerns were valid. So it was an interesting experience, which opened our eyes to the world of healthcare and the mental health support systems. Having said that, it were the same people who ultimately went out of their way to help us out and make sure that the challenges that our child and we encountered as parents uh, were resolved. So I'm not trying to say that the people did anything in a malicious way. I think they went out of their way to help us. It's just a shame that the system itself is structured in a way where they have to constantly worry about protecting themselves from a legal standpoint.
That this really highlights some of the big problems in healthcare. Most people who are working in healthcare have the right intention and they want to really do a great job for the patient in front of them. But the system is definitely broken. And across the country, ERs are often used as the first point of care for a lot of people who need mental health services, because the warm handoff and confidence you have in a good continuum of care system is not existing. And that's why people end up calling the police or sending people to the ER, as if that's, that puts me at ease that, okay, I know for sure if there's an emergency, somebody in the ER is going to handle it. But I've had experience of my patients who went to the ER who were actively suicidal and they were discharged in an hour. So it's not that there's a miracle treatment that has happened which fixed it. But the system is definitely broken, which everybody raises the alarm. That experience when you first got that phone call is a scary experience. And you said that ER was probably not the right place to go, which I couldn't agree more with. If you think of that moment, what would have been helpful?
What would have been helpful is an introductory or an exploratory therapy session, a family session. Because what happened was we went from everything is fine to go to the ER to next morning, oh, everything is fine again now that you have the paper signed, and that was absolutely, I can tell you, that was absolutely not the case. So a gradual exploration and some due diligence at the outset would have been helpful instead of going through different forms, so that was not the answer for sure.
Yeah, being in healthcare, I look at this at a system level. This is such a obvious gap in all of healthcare. It exists in every single kind of branch of medicine, that the kind of hand holding and support somebody needs at onset, exactly what you said. At that moment, if there was a therapist who was able to sit with the family and kind of debrief and go over a safety plan for home, that would have been less traumatic, less alarming, a lot more reassuring. And then, yes, you're right. Just a form getting signed does not mean anything. It just gives people some sense of, oh, okay, the form is signed. But that form is just meaningless for somebody. Mental health could be a thing that people are dealing with every day, and how you feel about it is different. The right thing probably would have been you have that debrief, you set up for the follow-up next day, right? And you have close follow-up and hand-holding. I think that would have been a lot better experience.
Yeah, and also I can tell you that now I'm able to talk about this in a lighter vein, but I can tell you that our child told us over the next few months and years that even if I feel a certain way, even if I feel like feeling 100%, I'm not going to tell anyone because then I'll be sent out of school. I'll be sent to an ER. I won't be allowed to attend classes the next day. So I'm not so sure that this particular policy helps patients. I mean, maybe it does if somebody is threatening to hurt themselves or hurt other people, if they are about to OD on drugs. Maybe those are real emergency situations, I think. But somebody feeling low, it's if I tell you that, hey, I'm feeling quite low and quite sad, and you tell me go to the ER, that's quite extreme.
No, I can't tell you how many times I've had patients talk to me, right? And they tell me, yeah, if I say anything, you're going to send me to the hospital, you know? And I've had meetings with patients where I tell them, I'll tell you, I guarantee I'm not going to send you to the hospital. Let's talk about it openly. And there obviously are situations, as you said, that somebody needs to go to the hospital. However, if somebody does have a relatively decent support structure, engaging that support, all of this takes time. Most systems are not set up to give you that time as a human, as a patient. Sometimes a patient is in such crisis. If you spend an hour with them, they don't need to go to the ER. They'll be good when they get home and you set up a good plan. But you, as a healthcare provider, may not have, or a teacher, may not have the bandwidth or the support from your team to be able to do that in the moment. So it's really huge disservice. And a lot of patients will not say that they're suicidal or have a urgent need just because the alarm it raises. One of the conversations I have with my especially teen patients' parents is that every time your teen tells you they may have some thoughts of hurting themselves or thoughts of suicide, please don't just raise the alarm bell. It is a very scary situation. I get that. And if you're very anxious about it, get your own therapy to manage that. But you need to be able to assess that situation and treat it without just everything is falling apart situation, which often it is not. Where do you think that any AI tools, AI therapists, and down the road psychiatrists maybe, like what role do they have? Do they have a primary role of being the only provider, or do you feel as a consumer it's a better role as an assist to the human provider?
I personally believe This is one area where AI can genuinely help us all. And we talk about the shortage of professionals in healthcare, in particular therapists. There are not enough of them. There are not enough of doctors, not enough nurses. And when it comes to physical aspects, we are relatively far from the future where an AI entity will be doing my blood work. However, when it comes to mental health and therapy, the opportunity is here and now. And yes, there are stories we read on the internet and on social media that somebody was chatting with an AI chatbot and the chatbot convinced this person to kill themselves. Yes, there are stories like that. But I believe, there are probably many other stories which are just the opposite of that, where an AI chatbot could be helping someone, could be filling in gaps, could be offloading therapists. And I see a definite use case of AI technology in offloading the uh, therapists and mental health professionals in a positive manner. So there can certainly be assistants who are keeping notes, who are even taking care of the patients at home in a trained manner. So used properly, I think there is quite a good use of this technology that is possible in helping the patients and offloading professionals.
There's a book by Eric Topol. His book on deep medicine, I believe, also says, humans will need to be better at being humans, at human features. I do agree with you. I think it can do a really good job of supporting somebody. What parts of the interaction in this journey did you have with humans that felt that would be nice for humans to be able to keep doing?
So the thing is, so many intangibles when it comes to interaction with humans. I believe this transcends just the interaction with a mental health professional, with a therapist, but definitely when it comes to the human to human interaction, intangibles like feeling the presence of another person who is there for you, paying attention to you, tone of voice, the care that people show in their facial expressions, knowing that there is another human being caring for you, paying attention to you, listening to you, responding to you, is something that will have to stay. I'm a huge proponent of the use of AI in healthcare, but I doubt that a human to human connection can ever be replaced. Yes, AI can help us be more accurate. It can probably prompt certain questions, which as humans we can forget if we have been doing the same task all day long. However, I'm personally convinced that it will be impossible to eliminate that human connection.
As humans, we need it too. It's not just. It is not just. It's not just about a task. It can maybe get you to a place that you feel good about seeking help or talking to people. Hopefully, I think that can, in that way, it can be very, it can assist you.
The interesting thing is that even if you have a negative interaction, and I'm probably speaking just for myself here, but even if I have a negative interaction with a human, I would rather have that than a 2-second interaction with an AI, which was neutral.
Well, negative interactions also teach us a lot as we get older, because there are negative situations in life, and if you only have all positive, especially as a kid, and you go out in the world expecting that, I think that's not the reality.
No, it's not reality, and also it is extremely boring. If you get the same, if you're always, there have been reports of late that after ChatGPT 5 was released, millions of people are complaining that it is not warm. It is not friendly. And that was a deliberate move by OpenAI. It wanted the answers to be more professional, more to the point. They did not realize that people using the chatbot had gotten used to the friendly tone. Absence of a human-like tone, human-like language, human-like emojis. There was kind of a revolt among the users, and OpenAI had to go back and change the algorithm again. So even in the use of AI, there is something to be said about a warm, emotional, welcoming.
An example I remember is I was seeing one of my patients, and again, this goes to show how the health system is set up in a way that it is not really helping the patient or the healthcare provider. Your appointment is really set up, and unfortunately, after a while, it almost seems that getting my note done is as important as the patient doing well, which is just not the right way to do it. I remember I was talking to a patient, and she said that she just lost her aunt. And I kept typing for like 5 seconds. And then something in my brain says that something wrong here, not appropriate. And then I suddenly realized I've not even said, I'm sorry for your loss, which is a very basic, it's not a doctor saying it, it's just human to human interaction. My brain was alerting me. So I did apologize for my oversight and said I'm sorry for her loss and explored that a little bit more. But again, the AI device that hopefully in the future, when if you have such an interaction, is recording and writing your note, even though it may seem different to patients in the beginning, like that full attention of a human provider and a healthcare professional to you could be very different in how you experience healthcare. Because I think that is what is also, as you said, even in the example you gave, instead of sitting down with us and trying to engage with us and try to problem solve with us, we were sent to the ER, which is hot potato situation, unfortunately, in healthcare sometimes. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what are you working on today, a little bit about your consulting?
Yes, absolutely. I have a few customers who have some very interesting projects underway. And there is one who runs a mission critical 24/7 security operations center. And they want to add a layer of AI to help out cybersecurity analysts. So interestingly enough, there are parallels between, running a security operations center and running maybe an ER, or a hospital. And the term that we use in the cybersecurity world is triage, so, and if
Yeah.
a security incident happens and
Right.
somebody needs to do triage, there is a lot of information flowing in from different sources, like it does, when a patient is brought into the hospital.
Right.
And at that instant, the human analyst needs to absorb data from multiple sources and quickly do triage, just like a health professional does, or a nurse or a doctor would have to do. And we are looking at adding a layer of AI for triage.
The information flow, is it consistent and reliable in that setting? Because in ER, some of the issue is somebody may show up to the ER. They may not be in a state to give their proper history. They may not have been seen at that ER in the health system before. So there's a lot of gaps in reliable information gathering, which people are trying to do the best with what they have,
To answer your question, the data is not reliable. So when there is a security incident, there is a lot of data coming in from a number of security platforms. And at that time, it all looks like something is under attack and something bad is about to happen. And we in the world of cybersecurity will tell you that almost half the time, those are false alarms, or as we call it, false positives. So if you take strict action based on a false positive, let's say you come to the wrong conclusion and you block something, you're essentially, instead of helping, you're hurting, because now that application is not going to work. Potentially, a lot of users will not be able to access a particular resource, which is a problem, right? So extremes don't help. And this is where AI can potentially work quite well, because one thing that AI systems can do is take data from many sources at the same instant, and based upon the learning that they have and based upon the training and the knowledge base that they have, quickly determine if this situation is real or not. So these are use cases where AI can actually be put to very good use. Generative AI is non-deterministic in nature, which normally is bad when you want the same reliable answer every time. But when you're dealing with fuzzy data, this type of technology can actually work quite well.
All of the examples you gave, I could immediately see the your example very well. You have so many sources of unreliable data, and you could give a patient a medication they may not need, and they may have a lot of side effects from it, or they may go into surgery they do not need, or investigation they do not need. So if there's a reliable way to gather that data, maybe analyze and at least present it to you, and then you can make that decision. Do you want to name your company and where people can reach you if they're looking for some help?
Yeah, it's right here on my T-shirt. It's called cybersc.ai. So if you want to learn more about what we do, you can go to www.cybersc.ai, and we are available to help you identify the best use cases for generative AI. If you want to see a demo or just chat with us, brainstorm a couple of ideas, we are very happy to do that as well.
I just want to say there's no financial conflict of interest. I support Dileep. He's my cousin and my brother, but at the same time, I'm not getting any cuts out of business that go to him. But yeah, I appreciate you being on the second edition of this podcast today. I think this was an interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck for future episodes as well. I look forward to listening to all of them.
Thank you.